Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. This happened during the 2023 holiday season, but I just discovered this subreddit and became obsessed with it, so I have to share my story. My grandparents immigrated to Canada from Italy in the 1990s and opened up a restaurant called La Cucina Bella. When they passed away, the restaurant went to my parents, who grew and expanded it over the decades. I started working at the restaurant when I was 15. As my parents got older, they eventually retired and became snowbirds, heading to Florida for the winters. They handed over the restaurant to me in 2021, but retained a small percentage of ownership as an additional revenue stream alongside their savings and annuities. As soon as I gained control, I modernized the place. I remodeled the restaurant, updated the logo, reached out to local and national papers for advertising, and invited food critics, bloggers, and social media influencers. At first, it was painfully slow, and I worried that the loan I'd taken for all these changes would be the biggest mistake ever, potentially ruining 3 generations of my family's business. But then a TikTok food critic with over 2 million followers featured us in one of his videos, and that became our catalyst. More people started coming to review us, and eventually we were seeing 5 to 10 times our usual business, even on Mondays. We became a hotspot for major events, and it wasn't uncommon for celebrities to visit. On those nights, I arranged for special high-profile chefs to prepare meals for our guests, which cost a fortune, by the way. During the 2023 holidays, we were beyond packed. People needed to make reservations in July to get a table in December. This success took years to achieve. When it gets busy, I don't just sit in my office. I'm on the floor doing whatever needs to be done, whether that's greeting people, bussing tables, or even mopping floors. On nights with high-profile guests or events, I wear a blazer and act more formally as the owner. One Friday night, a group of 6 women walked in. 5 looked like they were in their early 20s, while their leader appeared to be in her mid-20s. I figured she was either an older sister or perhaps a senior sorority member guiding some freshmen. I was at the door greeting guests when they approached. The leader, let's call her Queen Bee, was telling her followers, "This place is totally amazing. The food is to die for, and there might even be celebrities here tonight." She strutted up to me and demanded, "Table for 6, please." "Of course, may I have the name on the reservation?" I asked politely. She gave me a condescending look. "Oh, I didn't make one, but it's fine. The owner is a personal friend of mine. He always keeps tables open for special guests and said we could have one tonight." This was technically true. Many high-end restaurants, including ours, do keep tables for VIPs, but I had absolutely no idea who this woman was, and she definitely had never spoken to me about any special arrangements. She couldn't have picked a worse person to try this routine on. "I'm sorry, but we cannot seat anyone without a reservation. As you can see, we're completely full tonight," I explained calmly. I didn't want to announce that I was the owner and embarrass her in front of her group, at least not yet. "Are you serious right now?" Queen Bee pulled out her phone. "Girls, take a picture of this guy. I'm speaking to the owner tonight, and you'll either be cleaning toilets or looking for a new job by Monday." Her followers chimed in with synchronized sneers. "Yeah, kiss your minimum wage job goodbye," one of them called out. I couldn't tell if they were in on her act or genuinely believed she knew the owner. Queen Bee stepped closer, jabbing her finger in my direction. "Listen carefully. You can either give us a table or I can make your life very difficult. Your choice." "Obviously, you're nobody important here," another girl added, "because if you were, you'd know exactly who she is." They continued their barrage of insults, each comment more condescending than the last. "I can't believe they let the help make these decisions," one whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. After a long day and this display of entitlement, I had 3 options. 1. Reveal I was the owner and call her bluff. 2. Give in and provide a table just to end the situation. Or 3. Teach Queen Bee and her minions a valuable lesson. I chose option 3, partly due to some personality flaws I freely admit to, but mostly because I genuinely felt they needed to learn about consequences. Putting on my most apologetic smile, I said, "You're absolutely right, ma'am. Please follow me." I led them to one of our 3 VIP tables we keep open for celebrity guests. "I sincerely apologize for the confusion earlier," I added smoothly, "and to make up for the misunderstanding, your first 3 rounds of drinks will be complimentary." "Now that's more like it," Queen Bee smirked at her followers. "See, girls, sometimes you just need to speak up for yourself." As I seated them, I explained, "We'll just need one of your credit cards and IDs to keep on file. Standard procedure for our VIP section. We'll return them before you leave." Queen Bee handed over her cards with a flourish. "Tonight's on me, ladies," she announced, clearly trying to impress her entourage. I took their drink orders and informed them that due to our busy evening, there might be a slight delay with the food. The group barely noticed, too excited about their free drinks and exclusive table. After their 3 complimentary rounds and still no food, one of the minions flagged me down. "Hey, where's our food? We've been waiting forever," she whined. "Let me check on that right away," I replied. "Would anyone like more drinks while you wait?" "Bring us another round of those fancy cocktails," Queen Bee ordered, waving her hand dismissively. 2 more rounds arrived before their appetizers, and by then they were all noticeably intoxicated from drinking on empty stomachs. What they failed to realize was that they were sitting at a table that normally required a minimum spend of several $1,000s just to reserve. While I hadn't charged them for the table fee, I was charging them for every expensive cocktail after their initial 3 rounds. The VIP menu they were ordering from conveniently didn't display prices and featured our most expensive items: white truffle pasta, premium caviar, and specially imported oysters. One of the minions called out as I passed by, "Do you ever feel like totally worthless being just a waiter?" Another one added, "He's kinda cute, but imagine dating someone who serves tables for a living. Such a pushover." I overheard them plotting, "Next time we come, we won't even need reservations. He'll know better than to say no to us." These comments reinforced my decision to continue with their lesson. By the end of the night, each girl had accumulated between $500 and $600 in charges. When I presented Queen Bee with the final bill of $4,232.23, including tax and tip, the transformation was instant. Her giggling stopped, and all color drained from her face. "This has to be a joke," she stammered. "There's no way this is our bill." I examined the bill carefully and replied, "Oh, you're right. I apologize. Let me get you the correct bill." Her relief was palpable as she turned to her friends. "See? This ducking idiot gave us someone else's bill." Actually, I had forgotten to add her 8th order of premium oysters, a $120 charge. I gladly corrected this oversight and returned with the updated bill. When she saw the new total, she exploded. "This is insane! There's no way!" "Is there something specific you didn't order?" I asked calmly. "We can go through it line by line if you'd like." The group frantically checked their phones, calculating each item, including the complimentary drinks clearly marked at the top. Queen Bee's hands were shaking. I need to use the restroom," she mumbled, nearly knocking over her chair as she stood. Part of me wondered if she might attempt a dine and dash, but I subtly reminded her, "We'll have your ID and card ready when you return." 10 minutes later, she emerged with freshly applied makeup that couldn't quite hide her red eyes. "Listen," she said, trying to sound authoritative despite her trembling voice. "The food was terrible, the drinks were weak, and this whole experience has been awful. You need to cut this bill in half at least. The girls will help pay even though—" She glanced guiltily at her friends, who were now looking considerably less friendly. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. "And don't forget, I know the owner personally." She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of texts with a contact labeled La Cucina Bella Owner, obviously created during her bathroom break. "That's not the owner's number," I stated flatly. "He has multiple phones for business," she snapped. "Of course someone like you wouldn't know all his numbers." "How about we call him right now?" I suggested. "If he approves the discount, I'll happily apply it." "Go ahead. Call him," she challenged, clearly not expecting me to do it. I pulled out my phone, dialed, and put it on speaker. My phone rang loudly in my pocket. The look of confusion on their faces was priceless. "Hi, this is Marcus, owner of La Cucina Bella," I answered my own phone. "How can I help you?" The entire table went dead silent. Queen Bee's face cycled through several shades of red. "Now," I continued, hanging up and addressing them directly, "about that bill, you have 3 options. 1, pay it in full. 2, I can call the police and press charges for attempted fraud, given your earlier claims in that fake text conversation. 3, you can wash dishes until 3 a.m. to work off part of the bill. Your choice." Queen Bee's minions immediately turned on her. "You said you knew the owner? I can't believe you lied. I don't have this kind of money." After much drama and several failed attempts to use different credit cards, Queen Bee finally managed to pay the full amount. Her friends refused to chip in, claiming she had promised to treat them. As they left, I heard them arguing about how they'd never speak to her again. The next day, I checked our social media and saw several 1-star reviews from Queen Bee and her minions, claiming discrimination and poor service. I responded to each with security camera footage showing their behavior and the phone call reveal. The reviews were quickly deleted. A week later, we received a handwritten letter from Queen Bee, apologizing for her behavior and admitting she had a pattern of lying about knowing business owners to impress people. She asked if we could remove the security footage from our responses, which we did after confirming the reviews wouldn't return. The lesson cost her over $4,000, but hopefully it was worth it. We haven't seen her or her minions since, though we did get a surge of reservations after the security footage went viral on local foodie groups. My parents called from Florida to say they were proud of how I handled it, though my mother insisted I should have been more gentle with the poor girl. But sometimes, the best lessons are the expensive ones. The next one is an entitled people's story. Let me tell you about the absolute nightmare I've been dealing with for the past 8 months. I bought my dream house last year, a beautiful colonial-style home in a nice neighborhood just outside of Atlanta. The previous owner had owned it since the 1960s, long before any homeowners association existed in the area. When I purchased the property, my real estate agent and title company confirmed that while there was an homeowners association in the surrounding neighborhood, my specific property was explicitly excluded since it predated the association's formation. I did my due diligence before buying. The title search came back clean, and I have documentation showing my property is not part of the homeowners association. I even had my lawyer review everything to make sure there were no surprises. The house needed some work, but that's exactly what I wanted. A project house I could fix up exactly the way I liked. Everything was fine for the first couple months after I moved in. I started some basic renovation projects, nothing major, just painting the exterior a nice sage green. The previous color was a faded yellow that had seen better days, and cleaning up the somewhat overgrown landscaping. That's when the trouble started. One Saturday morning in March, I was out front pressure washing my driveway when a woman in her mid-50s marched up to me with that "I want to speak to your manager" energy. "Excuse me," she said in a shrill voice, "but you never submitted a color change request for painting your house. That shade of green is not on our approved color palette." I looked up from my work and turned off the pressure washer. "I'm sorry, but who are you?" "I'm Karen Johnson, president of the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association. You need to repaint your house immediately to an approved color or you'll be fined $100 per day until you comply." I tried to stay polite, even though her attitude was already rubbing me the wrong way. "Miss Johnson, I think there's been a misunderstanding. My property isn't part of your homeowners association. I have the documentation to prove it," she scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. Every house in this neighborhood is part of the homeowners association. You'll be receiving a formal violation notice, and if you don't comply within 14 days, we'll begin assessing fines. Again, my house is not part of your homeowners association. The previous owner bought this property in 1964, well before your association was formed in 1985. My property was specifically excluded, and I have the paperwork to prove it." She just waved her hand dismissively. "That's not possible. You clearly don't understand how things work here. I suggest you familiarize yourself with our bylaws and compliance requirements." Before I could respond, she turned on her heel and walked away. I shook my head and went back to my pressure washing, figuring that would be the end of it once I showed them my documentation. Boy, was I wrong. 3 days later, I found a violation notice taped to my front door, citing the unauthorized paint color and excessive noise from my pressure washing. The notice demanded I repaint the house within 14 days and pay a $50 fine for the noise violation. I wrote a formal letter to the Homeowners Association Board, included copies of my documentation showing my property's exclusion, and sent it certified mail. I figured that would clear everything up. Instead, things escalated. The next weekend, I was installing some new landscaping in my front yard when a police car pulled up. 2 officers got out and approached me. "Sir, we received a complaint about unauthorized construction work being performed without permits," one officer said. I explained the situation, showed them my property deed and the documentation proving I wasn't part of the homeowners association. The officers were actually pretty understanding once they realized what was going on. "We've had similar issues with this homeowners association before," one officer admitted. "Just keep your documentation handy. We have to respond to calls, but we can't enforce homeowners association rules on property that isn't part of their association." Over the next few months, the homeowners association called the police on me at least a dozen times for ridiculous violations. Having my garbage cans visible from the street, they were out for collection. Parking my work truck in my driveway. Installing a basketball hoop for my kids. Having guests park on the street during a BBQ playing music too loud during said BBQ, it wasn't. Installing security cameras without approval. Putting up Halloween decorations too early in September. Each time, I had to show the responding officers my documentation. While most were professional about it, it was incredibly frustrating to have my weekend projects and family gatherings repeatedly interrupted by police visits. The Homeowners Association also started sending weekly violation notices with escalating fines, which I ignored since they had no authority over my property. They even had the nerve to place a lien on my house for the unpaid fines. which my lawyer quickly got removed since it was fraudulent. Things came to a head in July when I decided to build a workshop in my backyard. I got all the proper permits from the city and began construction. The homeowners association lost their minds. Karen showed up with 2 other board members while the contractors were working. "Stop this construction immediately," she demanded. "This structure was not approved by the Architectural Review Committee." I was getting really tired of this harassment. "Karen, for the last time, I am not part of your homeowners association. I don't need your approval for anything I do on my property. I have all the required city permits, and that's all I need." "We'll see about that," she snapped, pulling out her phone to call the police yet again. This time, I was ready. I had set up security cameras after their earlier harassment, and I had footage of Karen and other homeowners association board members repeatedly coming onto my property uninvited, taking photos and leaving notices despite being told multiple times that I wasn't part of their association. When the police arrived, I was ready with my property deed, documentation showing my property's exclusion from the homeowners association city permits for the workshop, a log of every police call they'd made about my property, security camera footage of their repeated trespassing, copies of all their harassing notices and fraudulent liens, a letter from my lawyer warning them to cease and desist. The officers reviewed everything and finally had enough. They actually lectured Karen and the other board members about filing false police reports and harassment. "Ma'am, this property is not part of your homeowners association," one officer stated firmly. "You've been shown proof of this multiple times. If you continue to file false police reports and harass this homeowner, you could face criminal charges." Karen turned red in the face. "This is outrageous. We have every right to enforce our community standards." "No, ma'am, you don't. Not on this property," the officer replied. "I strongly suggest you consult with your homeowners association's attorney before taking any further action against this homeowner." But they still wouldn't give up. A week later, I received a certified letter from their attorney threatening legal action if I didn't comply with their demands. That was the last straw. I contacted my lawyer and filed a lawsuit against the Homeowners Association and its board members for harassment, filing false police reports, trespassing slander. They had been telling neighbors I was a troublemaker who refused to follow rules, filing fraudulent liens, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The Homeowners Association's attorney finally reviewed my documentation and realized they had no leg to stand on. They tried to settle quietly, but I refused. I wanted this resolved in court to prevent them from pulling this nonsense with anyone else. The case went to court in September. My documentation was rock solid, and the judge was not impressed with the Homeowners Association's behavior. The security camera footage of their repeated trespassing and harassment was particularly damning. The judge's ruling was better than I could have hoped for. The Homeowners Association was ordered to pay me $75,000 in damages. They had to send a formal written apology to me and all neighborhood residents. They were required to add explicit language to their bylaws about properties excluded from their jurisdiction. The board members involved were ordered to resign. They had to pay all my legal fees. The judge issued an injunction preventing them from entering my property or sending me any notices. They face significant fines if they violate the injunction. Karen and several other board members were also charged with filing false police reports, though they ultimately got off with community service and fines. The aftermath has been satisfying. Several board members resigned immediately after the ruling. Karen tried to rally support at an emergency homeowners association meeting, but the other residents were furious when they learned how much of their homeowners association dues had been wasted on this frivolous harassment. My neighbors have actually been great throughout this whole ordeal. Many of them were tired of the homeowners association's heavy-handed tactics and have thanked me for standing up to them. I've even helped some of them review their own property's documentation to check if they were actually required to be part of the homeowners association. Turns out a few other properties were also wrongly being claimed by the association. The Homeowners Association is still around, but with new leadership and much more reasonable policies. They've stopped harassing me completely, probably helped by the fact that they know I won't hesitate to take legal action if they step out of line again. My workshop is finished now. My house looks great in its sage green paint, and I can finally enjoy my property in peace. The security cameras are staying up though, just in case. The whole experience taught me a valuable lesson about standing up for your rights and not letting bullies push you around, even if they claim to have authority over you. Always do your research, keep good records, and don't be afraid to fight back when you're in the right. I'm just glad it's finally over and I can focus on enjoying my home instead of constantly defending my right to make decisions about my own property. The settlement money helped pay for some nice upgrades to my workshop too. Not a bad silver lining to 8 months of harassment. Update. It's been about 6 months since the court ruling, and I thought you might be interested in hearing how things have played out. The changes in the neighborhood have been pretty dramatic. After Karen and the other board members were forced to resign, the Homeowners Association held new elections. The new board is actually reasonable and focuses on things that actually matter, like maintaining the community pool and organizing neighborhood events rather than harassing homeowners about their paint colors or garbage cans. I later learned that Karen had been using her position as Homeowners Association president to run what amounted to a personal fiefdom. Several neighbors came forward after the court case with their own stories of harassment and selective enforcement of rules. It turns out she had been focusing particularly on homeowners who refused to use her son's landscaping business for their yard work. The new board did a full audit of the Homeowners Association's finances and discovered some concerning irregularities during Karen's tenure. Without going into too much detail, since there's an ongoing investigation, let's just say that not all of the Homeowners Association dues were being used for community purposes. The relevant authorities are involved now. Remember those other properties I mentioned that were wrongly claimed by the Homeowners Association? That turned into a much bigger deal than anyone expected. My lawyer helped several other homeowners challenge their forced inclusion in the Homeowners Association, and 5 other properties were confirmed to be legally exempt. The Homeowners Association had to refund years of collected dues to these homeowners, which added up to a significant amount. The publicity from my case also attracted attention from state legislators. They're now working on a bill to provide better oversight of homeowners associations and strengthen protections for homeowners. I've been invited to testify at a committee hearing about my experience, which I plan to do. Karen didn't take her fall from power well. She tried to rally support by going door to door spreading rumors about me and the new board members, but that backfired spectacularly when one of my security cameras caught her vandalizing my mailbox in retaliation. The police were much less understanding this time, given her history of filing false reports. She's now facing criminal charges for vandalism and harassment. On a positive note, the neighborhood atmosphere has improved dramatically. Without the constant threat of fines and harassment, people are actually talking to their neighbors again. We had a huge block party last month, something that would never have been allowed under the old regime because it would have violated about 15 different homeowners association rules. My workshop is getting plenty of use. I've been teaching basic woodworking to some of the neighborhood kids on weekends, with their parents' permission, of course. Even some of the former Homeowners Association supporters have admitted that it hasn't caused any of the problems they feared. The security cameras have stayed up, though they're mostly catching wildlife now instead of trespassing Homeowners Association board members. We did catch some teenagers trying to toilet paper houses during Halloween, but instead of calling the police, the new Homeowners Association board organized a community service project for them, helping elderly neighbors with yard work. The settlement money has been put to good use. Besides finishing my workshop, I've added a nice patio and fire pit in the backyard. I host regular gatherings there now, and yes, we sometimes play music and have guests park on the street, all without any police visits. I've become something of a resource for other homeowners dealing with homeowners association disputes. My lawyer has even started specializing in homeowners association cases, using my situation as a precedent. It's satisfying to know that standing up for my rights has helped others do the same. The most ironic part? Property values in the neighborhood have actually increased since the Homeowners Association reformed. Turns out people prefer living in a community where they don't have to fear constant harassment over minor infractions. Who would have thought? So while those 8 months of harassment were stressful, the outcome has been overwhelmingly positive. Not just for me, but for the entire neighborhood. Sometimes it takes someone willing to stand up to bullies to create real change. I'm just glad I had the documentation and determination to see it through. And yes, my house is still sage green, and it looks fantastic. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.